You know, some people out there, when they talk, they fake the funk. You want brutally honest? Well, if you want brutally honest, look no further than CG Ruthless Sports.
CG Ruthless.
CG Ruthless Sports.
CG Ruthless.
If you want your sports talk to be brutally honest, come check out CG.
CG Ruthless.
If you're not watching CG Ruthless, I don't know what to tell you. Representing the Niner Empire.
CG Ruthless.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ace Boogie from New Stripe City. What's good,
Thank
bro?
you. Appreciate it, man. Everything is good. Thanks for having me, Ruthless.
No problem, man. Where they can find you at social media platform, man?
You can find me on Twitter at New Stripe City. You can find me on Instagram at New Stripe City, and then also on YouTube, which is my biggest following, New Stripe City.
All right, that's good, man. So I'm definitely looking forward to this preview matchup since this is going to be one of the games of the weeks, I believe. What do you think, man?
Yeah, I think so. When you talk about these two teams, you're talking about two teams loaded with young talent, with you guys and Deebo Samuel. We've got Jamar Chase, Jimmy Garoppolo, and Trey Lance, Joe Burrow. I mean, this is one that they got to get up for because there's a lot of history between these two teams, right? And I think that this is kind of a new day for both teams, and it's going to be an exciting game. I think you're right about that.
Yeah, it goes way back from those two Super Bowls, and it goes on from the last 2 years. Last time we played you guys, it was a different team. This time around, I feel like it's going to be a far different Bengals team we're going to face. Like, this Bengals team has a really good offense. Like, I've seen how you guys were able to dominate the Baltimore Ravens, the Pittsburgh Steelers. The previous years, you guys were doormats at the time, but now you guys are kind of like the team that nobody's taking serious, but now they're starting to like take some notes on you guys. So it's like, man, Cincinnati is making some noise this year.
Yeah, I think I actually happened to be at that last game. That was not a good one to be at when we played you guys last time. You guys rubbed the floor with us. But last year, it really just was kind of a second year of a rebuild, right? So you're bringing in Joe Burrow. And a lot of people that, you know, they're going to look at the record. They're going to say, you know, this team wasn't really that good. They just looked at the top 5 pick. But, you know, as analysts, we have to watch the games no matter what. And the one thing that really stuck out last year is if you closely watch those games, the Bengals were in a lot of those games, right? They just didn't know how to win them at certain opportunities, and Joe was still getting his way. And then obviously Joe goes down after week 10. But I always say this, like there were probably about 4 to 5 more games in addition to the ones that they won last year that I feel like they could have won. And they showed flashes. There were just too many, I guess, deficiencies on the offensive line, deficiencies in the coaching department on the offensive line. There were just a lot of issues, injuries, and things of that nature. So, you know, I'm not too surprised with how they're doing right now. Now, I didn't expect us to pretty much go to the playoffs or anything like that this soon, but I did expect this team, especially with what they did in the offseason and especially with them being healthier with Joe Burrow, I did expect them to definitely be better than they were last year.
Yeah, definitely. Like, it's one of those teams that makes big splashes in the offseason. You guys were signing like a guy from the Saints, Trey Hendrickson. That guy is pretty intriguing. Like, he's becoming one of your best sack guys right now. So that's I don't know what kind of contract you were paying him, but he's worth every bit of that money and then some.
Yeah, it's definitely a favorable contract, I think, for the Bengals in terms of what they paid Trey Hendrickson. But he was a guy that as soon as we signed him, I went out and just did this series that I do this cut the tape on, right? So like I had to actually look at the film and see what this guy was about because I kept hearing so many, you know, fake narratives out there like the sacks were fake and all of that. And for me, I'm a film guy. Like the film never lies. So like men lie, women lie, but the film doesn't lie. And when I cut it on with this guy, what I saw was him just straight up beating guys one-on-one, opposite obviously of Cam Jordan, but it didn't seem like Cam Jordan had anything to do with it. It just seemed like he was beating some pretty quality left tackles. So Hendrickson has definitely stepped in as the top edge rusher in this Bengals defense, and he's definitely a force to be reckoned with. But he does have his work cut out for him this weekend because Trent Williams is having an elite season as well. So I think that this is probably going to be, I think not even probably, it is going to be the best left tackle that he faces this season.
Absolutely. I think that's going to be the interesting matchup is Trent Williams going to hold his own against Trent Hendrickson, or is Trent Hendrickson going to have a good game? And then you got Bosa versus your tackles. So that's going to be one of the most intriguing matchup also. But then when I look at the matchup, what's more concerning for my team is your receivers, because Emmanuel Mosley is going to be out for this game. And then you guys are going to be licking your chops, and you're going to look at exposing guys like Josh Norman and Dante Johnson, who's going to be starting for that week. So I feel like Jamar Chase is going to have his way. If not anything, then you got Tyler Boyd, who's a really good receiver. Then T. Higgins is a really good big target receiver that I've seen from the Bengals. And then you got some really good running backs. I like those two Oklahoma running backs. I mean, you guys are building on a good team right there. So I'm not oversleeping you guys by any means, but it's like that matchup kind of scares me with the secondary. What do you think, man?
Yeah, I think whenever you have to play the Bengals, that is the first thing that people kind of talk about. Like, how do we stop their receivers? And that's one of the reasons that they went out and drafted Jamar Chase, right? Because this offense is predicated and run basically off of those receivers in concert with Joe Mixon, right? But those guys kind of set everything up. Chase is kind of the guy that takes the top off of the defense, that speed that they didn't have last year. And in years past, honestly, it's been something that they've struggled with. So they finally have that with Jamar Chase, and they were able to rectify the deep ball issue that Joe Burrow had last season due to a lack of chemistry and just a lack of feel there. And they ended up bringing in Jamar Chase, a familiar target that can not only help him just in that aspect, but that's essentially his role in the receiving core. And then you have T. Higgins, who's like the big guy, who's interchangeable kind of as the wide receiver one between him and Chase, depending on which one that you pick. But they primarily do their work on the outside. And Higgins is going to get you on some short routes here and there, but he's also himself can hurt you deep at points. And he's a guy that likes to high point the ball. And Higgins has really got it rolling these last two games. And then you got Tyler Boyd, who's just a monster over the middle. And just really can be consistent with catching the ball. He's probably got the best hands on the team easily. And so the game plan literally revolves around those guys. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of defense that you guys kind of deploy against us. I would say that they're a scary matchup for a lot of teams. I mean, it's tough when you have those three receivers, and it's similar to what the Cowboys have, right? It's similar to what the Tampa Bay Bucks have. But I think what makes this one, in comparison to the Cowboys, what makes them kind of special together is that these guys are all super young, right? So I think that when any team is facing the Bengals, it's always going to be a challenge to kind of stop those three receivers. But I would say there are equally things from you guys' side that scares me as far as, the running attack that you guys have over there, that offensive line, right? When you talk about Deebo Samuel, that's a guy who's been doing his thing this season. Kittle as well. I mean, it goes both ways, bro. Like, there's going to be things that you might be worried about, but there's definitely things that I'm worried about on my end. And you talk about that defensive line as well, man. After the Bengals just gave up 6 sacks with two of our starters out, I'm praying that both starters are there. But even with the starters there, there's no way that you're going to shut out a pass rush like the one that you guys have coming up this Sunday.
Yeah, it's a very interesting group. Despite losing to Seattle, we were able to get to Russell Wilson a lot. And I've kind of seen what the Bengals have had with their offensive line. But so you guys are going to miss a few key of your starters, right?
Well, the thing is, those guys have returned to practice this week, and they've been in there in limited fashion. So I would hope that they actually end up playing. Before, they didn't practice at all. It seemed like last week, and when they did, it was super limited. But it seems that all indications are that we're going to hopefully get those two back because, man, without those two guys in there last week, it was not pretty.
It was not pretty. Yeah, I was watching that game, the Chargers and Bengals game, and which really got me by surprise that the Chargers defense was playing their best football. And then Joe Burrow just dislocated his pinky. Any update on him still playing through that pain tolerance or something?
Yeah, there's that. That's definitely been the biggest story this week, right? Because I believe on Tuesday they set, or not on Tuesday, but I think Monday they set him, or actually Wednesday. I'm sorry, Tuesday is their day off. Wednesday, I believe he sat out of practice. He did return today, and they said that they just wanted to give that pinky some time to rest because it is on his throwing hand. But today, all indications are that he was back throwing the ball. Pinky didn't seem to be an issue because in the game he kind of switched hands on which hand he was going to hand off with. They claimed today that he was handing off with his throwing hand, so that's a good sign. But for me, I think the way that Burrow is built just mentally, I think that he is a savage. And even after he dislocated the pinky, I saw him try to put some tape on it, and then he was like, you know what, I'm taking this tape off. And then he comes in and then he starts tearing up the Chargers at that point. So, it's definitely a concern for sure because it is on the throwing hand. We'll have to monitor and see how much that changes the game plan, right? If they're going to have him throw as much with that pinky. But all signs kind of point to that it is trending in the right direction.
Yeah, that's what matters. And plus, he was playing to that pain. So it's like I've seen what was going on. I was seeing him on the sideline, kind of like putting the tape on. Then he was like saying, heck with it. I'm just going to go throw the ball or something like that. And then he was just like, looked like he was yelling in pain in some ways. But when I look at the matchup, man, it's like I don't think it's going to affect him. He's a tough man. So I think it's just like a Brett Favre mentality, pain tolerance. You just got to play through it and suck it up or something. But the way I look at the matchup with the Bengals, like, your secondary, like I'm looking at the overall defense, and it's ranked 27 for some reason. Can you explain to me like what's the issue? Like you guys have been giving up some plays here and there. Like it's like I mean I'm looking into the rankings, and you guys picked up some really good cornerbacks. Oh, Uzude, I thought he would have been a really good pickup for you guys, but it's not the case with your other secondary.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been kind of a weird sort of defense to have because when you talk about like the total yardage and stuff like that, you're right. They're down there at the bottom, but then when you start to look at some of the scoring, then they kind of creep up a little bit. It's more of a bend but don't break defense, and some instances they've actually kind of been wounded by the offense. So like a lot of people look at our offense and they're like Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, all of these weapons, but they're not really consistent, right? And what that ends up doing is it ends up creating situations, especially when you have turnovers like last week, right? You get offenses that get the ball in favorable field position, right? Not only that, you also are pretty much having your defense out there for the majority of the game. Like I'm pretty sure even as we sit here in week 13, I believe it is, if you were to get a split between the time that the defense is on the field versus the offense, I'm pretty sure that it favors the defense by a pretty good margin, right? And we all know, like, you can have the best defense in the world, but if your offense is punting and stuff like that in the first halves and not really scoring and the defense is on the field, eventually they're going to give up, some points here and there. I would say our secondary is actually pretty solid. Because you got Cheeto, as you mentioned. You also have Eli Apple, which I think he's actually played pretty solid stepping into that role. We've had some issues with Trey Waynes, who's literally played like a game or two in 2 seasons, and he was a guy that we signed in free agency. He's actually expected to be back this Sunday to make his return after that hamstring injury. And then you have the safeties. Jesse Bates, he's not playing horrible. He's just not playing at the level that he was last year, where some were calling him potentially the best safety in the league. And so then you also have Von Bell as well, who's also solid. I think where they get hurt in the passing game is sometimes they like to run these zones and people can really kind of pick them apart and find areas that are open in the zone and really attack them. And then when you talk about the linebackers, we don't have really great coverage linebackers. So sometimes those guys affect the defense. Our run defense easily is the best part about this defense to me. They've done a really good job outside of maybe 1 or 2 games in controlling the run and shutting that down. And then when you talk about the aspect of the defense that also is pretty good, you're talking about the pass rush. And the pass rush has been at times extremely potent, and at sometimes they just kind of disappear. So it just really depends.
Yeah, so it just depends on how you guys perform.
Yeah, it definitely depends. They're a better unit than they probably look like statistically, just given all of those X factors.
Yeah, that's how our defensive line can be too. Like sometimes they can play good, but when it comes to the run defense, we're not even like we're like ranked at least in the 20 against the run. But I look at your guys' run defense, it's not as bad. Like I mean, I've seen you guys made some good stops here and there, but when I look at your overall defense, like you said, your linebackers are pretty much your Achilles heels too, because that's where a lot of the big plays, and that's where Kittle can take advantage of. So I can see where you're coming from, but
Oh
the only
yeah,
line.
I'm definitely worried about Kittle for sure. Especially like not only were the linebackers, I'm not gonna say that they were bad or anything, but I think if you look at all three levels of the defense, they're probably the weakest unit. And then you just lost Logan Wilson to injury, and so now you're even thinner at that position. And you got a guy like Kittle coming in there, so I'm definitely worried about Kittle for sure.
Yeah, he had a field day against Seattle despite that outcome, but man, he was almost close to 200 yards. I can imagine what it could be like for that Bengals matchup with the linebacker. Like you just said, Logan Wilson's one of your like your best linebackers, but he's ruled out for this week.
Yeah, Logan Wilson's going to be ruled out for the next couple of weeks for sure. It was definitely a serious injury, so he will not be there. So you will probably see a heavy dose of Jermaine Pratt. Marcus Bailey was injured in the last game against the Chargers, but he may be out there in the mix. And so it is something that you guys could potentially take advantage of. You got Joe Bacci that's probably there, who's never really played, at least for the Bengals, at least outside of last week. So definitely going to be an area that you guys probably will likely attack for sure.
So that would probably be the one thing we probably need to exploit more is just feed the ball to Kittle. But when it comes down to it, like I'm looking at the injury updates of my team, and there's a 50-50 chance that we might not even have Elijah Mitchell from what I'm looking at, depending on. But if he's going to clear out the concussion protocol, then I think he should be good to go. But when I'm looking at all the injuries, it's like I'm like thinking, okay, Debo should be good, but then it's 50-50 too. But, maybe they're making it guess for you guys. But I'm looking at Fred Warner, who should be able to return this week, which is a big
Fred
difference.
Warner is a stud. Yeah, Fred Warner is definitely a stud. I think from our perspective, like as Bengals fans, we really want teams to run. I think that kind of plays into the strength of, our D-line with DJ Reader. Not saying that we're just going to shut guys down, but they just uncharacteristically have been really good against the run, because even some of the old Bengals defenses, I'm talking Marvin Lewis days where they had good defenses, they weren't as good or as stout against the run. I think one of the ways that you guys can probably hurt us with those running backs is actually using them in the passing game. That's been something that has really this Bengals defense has really struggled with, especially when you get them out in space and stuff like that. So I already know Elijah Mitchell is an extremely talented back. If he can add that aspect or do something in that aspect, they definitely would be in trouble in that area. But if you're running right up like the middle or on the inside, that is something that they're pretty strong at stopping. But, I'm not going to say that, things can't happen with those 49ers running backs, because that is what you guys do. Kyle Shanahan, that is the one thing that scares me the most, because when you look at the Green Bay game, when you look at the Browns game or some of those games where running backs have just opened it up, I think definitely Kyle Shanahan with his scheme and how he runs the ball in creative ways could definitely cause issues for us, especially with Logan Wilson not in there. I mean, you need linebackers to definitely stop the run as well. And with you guys having Fred Warner, that's going to be tough for us, because Fred Warner is arguably the best linebacker in the NFL. So he's definitely going to have an impact in this game for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And depending on if Debo plays or Elijah Mitchell plays, that would determine the factor how we're going to match up against you guys. But I feel like it's going to be a really interesting game. I mean, Cincinnati, they do bring a really good problem when it comes to the offense, but on defense, they got a really good defensive line. Like you were just saying, like they can be really good at times, but they can be the type of team that can create the pressures and make it easy for your secondary to get those interceptions. So like Eli Apple, he was benefiting on those pressures, right? When you guys were making those pressures, he got those picks. He was originally a draft bust for the Giants, but now he's kind of making himself a name with the Bengals. And then you got Awuzie, who was a really solid, decent corner for the Cowboys. and he's making a name for himself with that secondary. So it's like it all depends on the pressure. When you guys do the pressure, that's where you guys get all those turnovers from.
Facts. And I mean, if you played football before, which I played corner myself, those edge rushers help you out, right? Because that pressure makes the ball come out all kinds of different ways to your advantage. And so, yeah, you're right. Like when the Bengals get pressure on those guys, it definitely does help them. Cheeto has just been playing out of his mind. I've been saying it all season. Like he, to me, has been playing like a top 10, top 15 NFL corner, I think, all season. And if he is out of this game, then I am extremely worried about what that would do to the secondary, even with Trey Waynes in there. Trey Waynes hasn't played, I think, since, the beginning of the season, honestly. So, that definitely will be a huge blow to a Bengals offense, because sometimes they even will take Cheeto and put him on a tight end like a George Kittle or something like that if you guys spread George out there. So not having him could be a huge loss for us. So we'll have to see if he's going to play or not this week.
So that would be the injury update is Awuzie on injured list, right?
Yeah, it would be. We'd have to see after today what his status was in practice. I don't recall too many because everything was about Joe Burrow and his pinky, honestly, today. So I didn't hear anything on an update for Cheeto, but Trey Waynes apparently is going to be back this week, I believe. So that's all I'm hearing on that front. So I would probably, if I'm just guessing, I would probably say Cheeto might not be in there this week, but it'll probably be like a game time decision kind of thing.
Kind of like the similarity with Elijah Mitchell and Debo, but I think they're pushing Debo to come back for this game because it's very important. Plus, this is a game where it's going to be a tough one. So I think if we don't have all our players out there, it's going to be really difficult to overcome with the Bengals. You guys came away with a loss to the Chargers, and I know you guys are pissed off about it. So I know for sure when you come home and host a game against us, you're going to take it on us, and we're probably going to do the same thing. But I think it's going to have something good in this game. It depends on who makes the lesser mistakes. And I feel like Joe Burrow is a better decision maker from what I'm looking at compared to Jimmy. Jimmy's been throwing picks here every now and then. It's just like, Oprah, you can have a pick. You can have a pick. Stuff like that. But Joe Burrow's been playing solid when it comes to decision making.
Well, I mean, it's kind of he has and he hasn't, right? Like he has these moments where he will start to play a little bit of hero ball. And I think about that second interception in that Chargers game, second down and goal, you could really live to fight for another down. And he kind of forced it there. He just was trying to bring the energy and do something. And it was just like, bro, you didn't have to do that one. So, it depends. I think about another one where he was going for Auden Tate, I believe in the Packers game. And that was a pick. But then he's had some weird ones where, just like that first one in the Chargers game, Jamar Chase bobbles it, and then the defender takes it, and that counts as an interception. He's had ones that he thought were fumbles that ended up being counted as interceptions. So his decision-making at times in certain situations, I feel like hasn't been flawless. I'll say that. Like, I'm not going to say that it's super shaky, but it hasn't been flawless. There have been some moments where I was like, Joe, you just didn't have to do that on that play. But overall, I think his decision-making, the way that he analyzes the field, the way that he sees things, I think that he is near the top when it comes to that processing and things of that nature.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, as far as him, I feel like he does better decision than what Jimmy's doing. That's what I'm saying. But, like, I think as long as you guys' defense can pressure on Jimmy, I feel like your secondary can capitalize. Like, yeah. I think it would have to be the same thing with Joe Burrow, too. If we could do the same, then it's anybody's game.
Are you guys still using, I know early in the season you guys were bringing in Trey Lance for like some packages. Is that still a thing now deeper in the season, or how are you guys kind of utilizing him in the offense?
Lately, they just haven't been able to use him. The last time they've used Trey Lance was that Vikings game, but that was probably when it was the last quarter of the game, and they just wanted to rest up Jimmy for those situations. But I feel like they were using him early in the season, and then now it's like not so much. Gotcha. So maybe we're having something under our sleeves. Maybe we might use him in certain package. Who knows?
Facts. Always got to keep defenses guessing for sure.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking the same way. Like, are we going to even use Trey Lance lately? Because it's kind of been like Shanahan's kind of been like saying, "Oh, I don't know about playing him," because it's like this, like they just not sure what to do with him at this point. They just want to stick with Jimmy. Maybe like on a third, maybe like in a goal line situation like we've done before. Maybe that's where we might put Trey Lance at. Other than
That's
that,
what I would kind of imagine is like some kind of trick play or something, like maybe just like a snap a game or something like that, or where he comes in and runs like some kind of option or read option kind of thing is what I kind of figured. I was just wondering because I was a huge Trey Lance guy, believe it or not, before the draft, and I thought that I was confused. Like when you guys traded up, I was like, I think it's for Lance because everybody was like, oh, it's for Mac Jones, and I'm like, nah, I think that it may be for Lance. But I like what you guys are doing with sticking with Jimmy G, giving Lance like at least a year or whatever to see and kind of grasp the NFL, especially with him coming out of what is that, Colorado State or something like that?
North Dakota State.
North Dakota State. Sorry, the same place Wentz came from. Yeah, I think that I like what you guys are doing with him, and I think Jimmy is still solid, right? It's not like Jimmy is like Andy Dalton or anything like that. So you still got a pretty good quarterback there. You probably want a little bit more consistency, but I think he's not doing anything for you to say, hey, it's Trey Lance time yet.
Yeah, they just want to make sure he's ready, so that's probably why we're sticking with Jimmy. But a lot of our fans are complaining about it, like when are we going to put Lance out there? But at this point, what do we got to lose? But we're already in the mix of the playoffs, so it's like at this point you might as well just ride with Jimmy until the end of the season.
Yeah, don't change horses midstream. Definitely not.
Yeah, that's what it is. But so how do you feel about what favors your Bengals more in this matchup with the Niners?
It's tough, man. These are like the Niners from an outsider's perspective. They don't really have too many weaknesses. I would probably say like Deebo Samuel scares me a lot. If he doesn't play, then it's Kittle. So I would probably say if Deebo doesn't play, I feel like our secondary minus, I guess, the safeties against Kittle would kind of have an advantage. So I guess you would probably say the corners against the other receivers. I would probably say that the run defense is very solid. It's hard to know because I think that they'll have Pratt, who's usually there. But the big question is who's going to be there opposite of Pratt, and can Joe Bacci continue to stack on with what he did last week? I would probably say the run defense. Normally, I would say the edge rush, but given that the offensive line that you guys have, I think that you guys actually have a good offensive line that could make it tough for us to get there. So I can't say that we have the advantage in the trenches. I would probably say maybe the quarterback position. I haven't watched much of Jimmy G this season. Burrow, I think that they're pretty even, but you might give the slight edge to Joe Burrow. As you talked about earlier, the wide receivers, I'm always confident whenever we come out with our three receivers. But there's things with the Bengals, man, like the coaching I'm kind of concerned about because you have Shanahan, who generally is a pretty good decision maker, and there is potential for him to outcoach Zach Taylor. So those are some things that kind of worry me because you'll see with the Bengals, sometimes I talked about the offense being inconsistent. Sometimes some of the play calling gets questionable. Now, they really improved on that after the bye, but there's sometimes instances where you're like, okay, well, that we kind of saw that coming. Like, that was an obvious screenplay to Jamar Chase, or, hey, that was an obvious first down run by Mixon. They've gotten better with it recently, but I would probably say those are like some of the edges and weaknesses that I'm worried about. When it comes to kicking, I guess we could say that we have a pretty solid kicker as well, and Evan McPherson, he's a rookie. So I don't know if we really have the advantage there, but it's not a situation where it's like in years past, I'm worried about fat Randy Bullock going out there and shanking the extra point to cause us to lose the game like he did week 1 of last year against the Chargers. So those are the positions that I would probably feel the most comfortable about, and those are the aspects of this matchup from your side that I'm probably most worried about as well.
Okay. So who do you expect as that player for the Bengals to be the X factor for this week?
This one it's tough, man. Like, Honestly, looking at it all, it's hard to pick a receiver because it seems like each week one of these guys has a game. But if I'm hearing what you're saying and you're worried about the starting corner not being on Jamar Chase, it could potentially be Jamar Chase, especially like with Fred Warner back with what you guys are doing there against the run. I can't really say Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon's probably going to be involved there. And it's hard to say that he's not an X factor because the guy has scored a touchdown in the last 9 games. But I think that it'll probably be Joe Mixon. And I think on defense, the X factor is probably going to have to be Von Bell or Trey Hendrickson. But Trey Hendrickson can get nullified by Trent Williams. But if he doesn't get to the quarterback, I'm not sure who else can really get to the quarterback against that offensive line. So those would be guys that I would probably say. Obviously, Joe Burrow is an X factor, but I mean, you're kind of expecting that. But I would probably say Jamar Chase, after having not as hard of a start in the second half of the season as he had in the first half. So maybe him, potentially Tyler Boyd, but I'm going to go with Jamar Chase.
Yeah, that would be the more favorable matchup. The way I look at the X factor, like I think Jamar Chase should have his way with the secondary. Like if it's Dante Johnson or Josh Norman, forget about it. I think Jamar Chase is he's going to have a breakout game. Trade Henderson, like you said, it could just be a nullified situation because Trent Williams is going to match up well. But Von Bell, maybe he might give you guys some turnovers, so that might be the X factor right there. But when I look.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was going to say the thing about the Bengals with Hendrickson, they don't really move their edge rushers around. So it would be one thing if he could get off of, Trent Williams and go to the other side, but they just don't do that.
Yeah, like you were saying, like the way it seems like to me with the Bengals, like I think Von Bell would probably be the one guy that gets no recognition as much. Like he's kind of like I guess you can say he's like your Jimmy Ward version. Probably makes the turnovers or does the job right. Doesn't put out the flashy stats, but he's probably going to be the one guy that we probably need to watch out for. Especially what I've seen from him was those forced fumbles. Like he's been able to force some fumbles. He's made some consistent tackles. I mean, I do a lot of the film work on watching a lot of these players, and I see a lot of what I'm seeing out of these players, and that's one of the guys that's under the radar is Von Bell. J.C. Bates, like he just said, he hasn't had a really good year like last year, but he was the one guy that's been very dependable as a starter. But your secondary, Awuzie, like you said, it depends if he's going to play or not. That can be the biggest difference there. But when I look at the matchup, what favors us is our running game. But then you guys have a really solid run defense, so that might be the toughest task. But like you said, our trenches, our line, we might be able to overcome that. Maybe with Deebo Samuel returning, we might be able to just do those jet sweep run plays like we've done the previous weeks before he was injured. Maybe we might get you guys off guard with the Deebo plays.
Yeah, Deebo is who scares me about you guys the most. You know, I looked into some of the numbers coming into this week, just trying to get an idea about that 49ers offense. And honestly, I prefer film. But this was something that I looked at, and it was like I looked at your top 5 guys in targets on the season, and Deebo Samuel accounted for like 38% of the targets. So like he's the guy that can just literally blow up a game. And there's so many things. And it's funny because, Bengals fans, we're just fans of football in general. And a lot of our fans were saying like, man, we need to take a page out of the 49ers book and use Jamar Chase kind of like Deebo Samuel, because even though Chase is, electric and stuff like that, he's kind of a thick kind of running back type receiver that, is kind of rare out there, right? Like similar to Deebo. So, I think that the Bengals need to definitely take a page out of the 49ers book and try to figure out creative ways to kind of use him in this offense when teams start to double team him and try to take him away.
Yeah, that would be the best way to go. I mean, if he's good after the catch too. So if you guys can figure out ways to utilize him, that might be the scary factor. If you can just take a page off of us, maybe our defense might be catching off guard off those plays. But yeah, Jamar Chase is like, he's one of the better receivers I've seen in the draft. Like him and Justin Jefferson, even Jefferson was like a previous year before him, but I thought those two LSU receivers were like a really good receiving core right there.
Yeah,
But when I
that
saw
LSU trio was crazy.
yeah, especially like Jamar Chase, I just think he just has the better route running, and he's got the speed to separate, and he can make any play happen at any point in the game. So that could be the game changer. Is Jamar Chase? Like, there's been quite a few games where he had like at least close to 200 yards a game, and I'm like, damn, this guy's unstoppable.
Yeah, Chase is insane, bro. Like, and I've seen him like in person in the club in Cincy. I think that was the Jags week, and we went up there. And it doesn't look like it on television, but dude is like swole, bro. Like, it's like, all right, he's not small. Like, so I can see why he kind of breaks so many tackles from corners, because he's just so massive at the top of his build. And you know, that speed with that, it's a tough combination for sure.
Definitely is. So like the one X factor that you guys might need to watch out for is Brandon Ayuk. That's another guy.
Okay. I like Ayuk. I was a big fan of Ayuk. He's another one that definitely piqued my interest, because I'm a huge draft guy, so I'm always looking at receivers and stuff like that. And the 49ers definitely got a couple of guys that I was like, man, those are some good guys. So Brandon Ayuk, I definitely am familiar with, and definitely worried about him as well.
Yeah, that would probably be my one X factor. But on defense, man, if Arden Key keeps on playing the way he was playing, I think he might be the one guy that steps up as a pass rusher. Like, I've seen him kind of improve the last few weeks, kind of been the guy that's been consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Like in the rotation, he's been able to take some snaps off of D Ford, and he's been able to take the most out of it. But then we just got one of your old faces, Jordan Willis. He's kind of been the guy that we got on the rotation. He's kind of had his one breakout game where he had one sack, kind of like almost determined the game against the Seahawks.
Right.
But he might be the one guy that you might need to watch out for is Jordan Willis.
Very loud guy, right? I'm just kidding. He's very quiet, and Jordan Willis definitely has the physical traits to wreck a game. I'm surprised that he hasn't really put it together before now, because he's got crazy physical traits. But you're right, like that speed, that explosiveness, like he's definitely a guy that can bring the X factor to any team. Has he started to lighten up though? Is he actually talking and having fun now, or is he still like, this guy could have been a serial killer if he wasn't an NFL player?
I don't know. He just looks bulky, but lately, like he was coming off a suspension like few weeks ago, so he's kind of getting back in the game shape. So he had one game against the Seahawks where he had like at least a sack on Russell Wilson.
This dude, when he got drafted, he like didn't even celebrate when he got drafted. He like locked himself in a room and was just like, it's on. Like, I was like, all right.
You would think he was dead serious, like it's on.
Right.
Yeah, like there's quite a few of these guys that we've been able to make the most out of, like these lesser known guys. Like Chris Kaczmarek can just really make the most out of these guys. Like there's guys like he made Deion Jordan look decent, then he's not here with us next year. So it's like it's kind of been the other way around. Then Kerry Hyder wasn't a quite big name, but he got his big payday in Seattle because of Chris Kaczmarek coached him up to have 8.5 sacks. So maybe with Arden Key, you get something with consistency. I don't know what the Raiders did with him to begin with, but he doesn't look like the same guy with the Raiders. He looks like a complete different player.
Yeah, sometimes when you just get that good coaching, man, a lot of people don't realize how far good coaching can do. We've seen it in Cincinnati with Mike Zimmer. I mean, we've seen it this season with Lou Anarumo in certain instances with Cheeto and some of these guys that fit the scheme. Some of the guys that have been there, and you even talk about the defensive line coach with Hobby. He's brought something here to a Bengals team in a pass rush that really only had 17 sacks last year, and now they're out here bringing the pressure. So coaching is definitely key and definitely matters in the NFL, and definitely helps get the best potential out of players for sure.
Yeah, it sure does. And it does make the most out of it. Like a change of scenery is not always a bad thing. Like if you can get the most out of these players and they got something to prove, then you're getting a blue chipper out of these guys. Just because they're like first round bust or early round bust doesn't mean they're not going to be terrible. They just have to get a change of scenery.
Right. No, I'm with you on that.
So like, so when we look at the overall like prediction, I feel like this game can come down to maybe down the wire, maybe at this point of the game, because I feel like it depends on which team makes the lesser mistakes. So at first, when it came down before that week, we beat the Rams. I wasn't really confident about playing Cincinnati at first. I was like, man, if we play this team, I don't know. But then the way I'm looking at it, it's like if we control the time of possession, I feel like it can come down to a 3 or 4 point type game. Cincinnati, they're a good team, so it's not going to be easy to beat them at this point. But they came away with a defeat with the Chargers, and we're nowhere near the Chargers level. But still, you got to figure out ways to get to Joe Burrow. You got to be able to cause those turnovers on Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon's been having ball security issues from what I'm looking at. And that can be a little concern for you as Bengals fans, is looking at how Joe Mixon hasn't been able to hold on to the ball as much.
Yeah, I think like Joe Mixon, he hasn't really had too many ball security issues. He did have obviously that one that was a juggler one there, and I think he's had another one. But he's usually, for the most part, pretty solid in that department. But turnovers, you're right. I mean, the Bengals offense, every game, even coming out of the bye, has had at least one turnover, whether it's a fumble, whether it's an interception. And those things change ball games. I keep talking about it. I keep preaching on it. It's, for the most part, if you look at turnover differential, like for the most part, it's almost in the 70 percentage points that if you win that, you're going to win the game. And so you're right about that when it comes to that. This game, from early on in the season, I was just like, bro, it's the 49ers. Like, I still have that 2019 loss fresh in my head when you guys ran for like 200 or 300 yards against us with like 3 different guys. I was there. I was at the stadium. Okay. So I was not confident coming into this game. This is like, when I looked at the bye week schedule, this was the game that I was worried about, because even though we're good at stopping the run, you guys run it in so many different ways. You have a good defense. Like, the 49ers are a really good team, right? Like, just on paper, if you're looking at all of the skill players and stuff like that, this team is loaded and talented. The only thing that made me feel somewhat better is because a lot of the games that I myself have been like, man, I'm worried about that one, we've ended up somehow winning. And the fact that this is a home game and it puts the onus on you guys to travel from the West Coast, I hope that gives us some type of shot in this game. But to be honest with you, it's tough. I'm almost feel like since we lost the last game, usually we have pretty decent bounce back games. But if we come out again and start off slow like we've done the majority of the season, this could easily be a game that we could lose for sure. But I'm hoping that it doesn't go that way. Obviously, we're both hoping that our teams pull this out. But this is not by any means something where I would go out and be like, oh, we're winning this one. Like, no. Originally, when I saw this one, I was like, man, I don't want to play that. And I think when I did my predictions before the season, I think I had this one as a loss. Talking to my co-host on the Orange is the New Black podcast, he was telling me, he was like, yeah, I don't know if I want the 49ers. And so this is going to be a game where we have to see how they come out and play with everything that's on the line. I think that adds even more to this game for both teams. But they got to stop turning the ball over. And it has to start in this game for the Bengals. And so if they can do that, if Jamar Chase can return to form, then it's still going to be a ball game, because you guys have plenty of talent over there. And this could go either way, honestly. Like, I couldn't call it, bro. Like, if I'm picking a parlay sheet, 11 team, this game isn't on it. I'll tell you that. Like, I'm not putting anything on this one. So I feel like it can go either way, because both of these teams are talented. And I think both of these teams are headed down the right path.
Yeah. I had this game marked as an L because the way it seems like I feel like the way at first, in the beginning of the season, I was looking at the way you guys were previous year. I was like, man, we might beat you guys. Mm-hmm. But then when I looked at how you guys were playing early in the season, I'm like, damn, we'd be lucky to play a decent game with you guys. But here's a question by 49ers Ultimate Report, which we were already discussing earlier, like about Joe Burrow.
Right. So he's asking, is Joe Burrow's finger still injured? Yes, it is still injured. He did miss, I believe, a practice on Monday and Wednesday. They just sat him out, just to rest the pinky, just so it could heal. But today he actually returned to practice, was throwing and everything. So that was a good sign. I would expect him to play. He was at practice. He was throwing. So I would expect him to definitely be there. Burrow's not going to – you probably have to take this guy's arm off to get him to not play in a game because he's built different just because he comes from a football town. He comes from a football family with his dad being a coach. He just lives and breathes football. So it was hard for us to even keep him off of the field with him coming back from the knee injury. Like he came back, a lot of people don't realize this. He came back to practice and stuff way ahead of schedule. So that's just the type of guy that he is. But yeah, I think the finger is definitely still injured, but it seems to be in better shape than it was obviously last Sunday.
Yeah. So these players who are on injury updates will determine which outcome it's going to be. Like you just said, Owuzie, if he's ruled out, that can be the biggest X factor for this offense because of your pass defense. But if you miss him, that's a big blow, like according to what you're saying. But for you guys, you should be able to have a great matchup on our secondary. Dante Johnson, he should be no problem for Jamar Chase to beat. T. Higgins, he should have his way with Josh Norman or whoever they put the matchup on. But Tyler Boyd, that's the one guy that you got to watch out for. He's very reliable. He's been the most consistent receiver for you guys since you guys drafted him. He's been the guy that when it comes to those third down plays, he might be the guy to make those catches. And I've seen a lot of what you guys do. Like you like to spread the ball around. Sometimes it could be Jamar Chase having a great day. And then like you just said, it could be T. Higgins coming off. And then Tyler Boyd can be one of those dudes. So it's like Joe Mixon, people forget that he's a good receiving back also. So that guy can come off at a breakout game. So
and then we also have he didn't play last week. Chris Evans, he's a rookie that we drafted this year. He's also a guy that you have to watch in the passing game because I compare him really to kind of like Reggie Bush, honestly, like where Reggie Bush could not only play running back, but you could line him up at receiver and he could probably end up being a receiver for you if you want as well. So he's another guy to watch at least on the injury report front because we didn't have him last week. So he's a guy that can really do some things, not only on the ground, but in the passing game as well. I think he had his first touchdown against the Lions. They kind of split him out wide and nobody kind of saw it coming. So he's another guy to watch for if he does end up playing in this game. I think he was battling, a hamstring injury or something like that. So just another guy for you guys that may be under the radar. If you see like 25 out there and you're like, who is this Evans guy? He's a really big sleeper because he played at Michigan and if I'm not mistaken, he got suspended for some kind of academic reasons or something like that. So he really fell under the radar. But believe it or not, when he was scheduled to come out, he was supposed to be like a top 50 prospect. He just kind of got lost in that shuffle. Then you had obviously the COVID and everything. So he is somebody to at least keep your eye on. And you'll probably see Bengals fans get excited when they see Chris Evans on the field.
Okay, so Chris Evans, I definitely might need to keep a radar. And then there's another guy you guys got, Auden Tate, that big receiver. Yes, I don't know.
Auden has been hurt the past couple of weeks. I'm not sure what's going on there. But generally what really you'll probably see is Auden's been out, I think, like the last 3 weeks. You'll probably see them bring in receivers outside of who I call the Migos, which is T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and Boyd. You'll probably see what's the guy's name? I believe his first name is Stacy, number 17. He usually comes in. He'll probably be like more of a blocking receiver, but sometimes they kind of throw things at him. And then you'll probably also at times see like Michael Thomas for like one or two plays. Sometimes he will make a catch. That's one of the guys that they usually use as well. Auden Tate, when he's available, sometimes you'll see him get in there. And then they also have a guy by the name of Trenton Irwin who gets some time from here and there, but you really won't see those guys for the most part. That's what his name is, Stacey Morgan. You'll see Stacey Morgan a lot in there, but really it'll be like to help in the run game, or if they're doing a screen or something like that, you'll see him out there. So if you see that guy go out, that's who that is. And as far as tight ends, CJ Uzoma, I'd probably say after the Migos, he's probably the next guy that can be an X factor. He's not probably an elite tight end, but he's better than average. So like he can make plays, but with those guys, they kind of decide when they go to CJ Uzoma as well.
Yeah, and then when you're talking about another X factor, Kyle Juszczyk's another guy to watch out for. This guy is more than just a fullback. He's just a He was a receiving tight end coming out of Harvard. So it's like we've been able to use him in a lot of different ways.
Oh, we
So I feel
remember
like
him.
that.
He used to be on the Ravens, right?
Yeah, he was on
Yeah,
both.
we remember him. Yeah, oh yeah, we remember that guy.
We've been able to spread him the ball as a receiver, so he's been kind of very effective. So that's another guy to watch out for. And then especially Juan Jennings. He may not be the guy that makes the big time plays, but when it comes to our running game, he's the most important player on our running game when it comes to, because he's a very physical blocker, but sometimes he may make the contested catches. But then we got this other guy besides Kittle named Charlie Warner. That's one guy to watch out for. Like, he may catch every now and then, but he's a blocker, so he'll increase the running game better. But as far as the prediction, since I'm looking at this game and thinking, well, Seattle has familiarity with us, so it's like it's one of those days. But I feel like the Bengals and Niners, it kind of seems 50-50 who to pick. And I know that the way it's looking like, if we get Debo back and those players back, the confidence seems to go a little bit back up. So I feel like the Niners will probably be able to score 31 points. But Bengals, I feel like Bengals are a really good team, so it can really come down to which team's going to show up. So I feel like Bengals probably get 28 out of it. I think it might come down to a field goal. And I'm not trying to get too ahead of you guys. I feel like you guys are a good team, but it's like, what's going to happen? You know, I don't know which Bengals team's going to show up, which Niners team's going to show up. So I know what you got your prediction on.
If the Bengals win this game, it'll have to be that they don't let George Kittle wreck the game. George Kittle's going to get his. He's just good, but you gotta probably keep him at like 80 yards and no touchdown, or maybe one touchdown and like 50 yards. Like, that's what you got to do there. Obviously, if Debo plays, you got to try to contain him. In order for them to do that, they have to be consistent. They can't turn the ball over. If they do that, I think that they can win this game because it is at home. But I still think that it's going to be a close game. They haven't scored 30, it seems like. Well, no, they scored it against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I think that they're good and pretty consistent at scoring 30. And I also feel like if Cheeto doesn't play and Trent Williams is able to try to fend Trey Hendrickson off of Jimmy Garoppolo, that it's going to be a tough game. I think it'll probably be, like you said, in the 30s. So I will go with 33-30 Bengals with a walk-off field goal from the rookie kicker. So I'll go with that. If they are to win this game, it would be that way. But this is a game that they could lose.
Yeah, it's 50-50. I can see it as a loss too, because I did had it right down as a defeat because the way you guys were playing. But now that I see the way it's going, it kind of gives me a little confidence. Like, it's Seattle. They always tend to play us better. So maybe we just play better with other opponents.
Divisional games are always like crazy, bro. You just never know how it's going to go. But I was feeling like that. Originally I had this as a loss. Okay, the 49ers are kind of having a slow start to the season, and then you guys just started banging win after win after win. And I'm like, all right, here we go again. I don't know if we want to play these guys. Yeah, it's going to be a 50-50 toss-up for sure.
Yeah, I think it's 50-50. But as far as I appreciate you having me on the show. Let me know anytime in the near future if you want to collaborate, man. I appreciate your breakdowns and all the other stuff. Definitely might need to check out more of your AFC North talk.
Yeah, appreciate that. So, yeah, if you guys are interested in watching the AFC North Talk, that is on YouTube. We're also on Twitter at AFC North Talk. You can find my channel at New Stripe City on Twitter and on YouTube. And, yeah, Ruthless, I got to have you run it back on my channel for sure. We'll just go ahead and knock that out. But, yeah, appreciate you for having me, and thank you.
No problem, man, and anytime, man. So CG Ruthless Sports and Ace Boogie is out. As always, go Niners.